hard numbers on those people who may have been in the World Trade Center yesterday when the two towers came down. The estimates are from 10 to 20,000. Most of them would then believed to be trapped in the rubble. Several hundred did get out, but certainly not that number, 10 to 20,000. The president said last night he does expect the death toll to be in the thousands. Mayor Giuliani of New York City is only saying that it will be horrendous. In fact, it could be in the thousands. At the Pentagon, they've lowered the death toll now in that section of the building that was hit by the hijacked airliner that took off from Dulles to just over 100 so far. That's still far too many, obviously, but it's well below the number that they were using yesterday of 800. Let's go back to David Bloom, who's also in Lower Manhattan, to get an update for you now, Dave. And I just want to tell you, David, that if we interrupt you quickly, it is only because Attorney General Ashcroft is scheduled to give the nation a briefing on law enforcement efforts here momentarily. David Bloom.
Well, Tom, very quickly, of course, it is those law enforcement efforts that as of 3 p.m. this afternoon Eastern Time are the focus of most of our inquiry. We know from authorities, FBI specifically, that federal agents are questioning possible suspects in both Florida and Boston. That is where this investigation is leading, linking them, these authorities say, possibly to the Saudi-born terrorist Osama bin Laden. Tom. In Boston, site of 2 hijackings, police and FBI agents storm a hotel. 1 man taken away, but authorities are not confirming any arrests. In New York, at least 5 firefighters and 3 police officers removed from the debris, alive. But as rescue workers and National Guard troops labor in Lower Manhattan, the fate of tens of thousands of workers believed to have been inside the Twin Towers at the time of the attacks still unknown. In Washington, President Bush meets with his national security team, then condemns the attacks, vowing again to punish those responsible.
The United States of America will use all our resources to conquer this enemy. We will rally the world. We will be patient, we'll be focused, and we will be steadfast in our determination. This battle will take time and resolve, but make no mistake about it, we will win.
Tom, I just want to mention what I hope is obvious to the naked eye behind me. This large plume of now mostly gray smoke is spreading, drifting, if you will, from Lower Manhattan, approaching us where I stand now in Midtown Manhattan. I was, of course, down there all morning. It's getting more difficult to breathe, more difficult to see. You have a lot more of the rescue workers putting on those masks, and people are starting to drift away from that scene because it is becoming so difficult to breathe. Tom?
All right, David Bloom, let us show you the reverse of that. That is a live picture behind me taken from New York Harbor of the scene in Lower Manhattan, and the smoke is even more dense from this perspective. That has been going on now for, well, about 30 hours altogether. It was just before 9 o'clock yesterday morning that the first tower of the World Trade Center was hit, and then the second one shortly after that. Before noon yesterday, they both came down. They disappeared from the Manhattan skyline. There's a lot of collateral damage, a lot of fires. Another 40-story building came down. And as you can see, the smoke and the continuing dust and debris is making working and the very already difficult work of searching for those people who may be alive and removing the dead, making that already difficult work all the more complex and personally difficult for the workers who are down there. And in fact, they're probably at some health risk as well. We just want to bring you up to date. We are awaiting Attorney General John Ashcroft, who will be supervising the federal law enforcement investigation, the FBI and other agencies as they fan out across America, and for that matter, ask the assistance of international law enforcement agencies as well. Here is some videotape of a train being stopped today in Providence, Rhode Island, at the request of the FBI. It stopped the train because they wanted to question one of the passengers on board, for what reason we cannot say. But NBC's Pete Williams told us earlier that the FBI is asking for a number of material witness warrants that gives them the right to question a lot of people who may have some knowledge or even connection to those terrorists who seized the airliners yesterday and declared war on America with their unspeakable acts. There were reports of arrests today in the Boston area. Law enforcement agencies were seen entering one of the large midtown hotels in Boston, the Westin Copley Hotel. There were even reports that one person may have been wounded. That has not been confirmed, but there have been some reports that 3 people have been arrested or at least brought in for questioning in the Boston area. That was the locus of a lot of the investigation because 2 of the airliners were hijacked shortly after they took off from Logan Airport, and they did find a rental car that belonged to 2 of the suspects who apparently died when the planes went into the World Trade Center towers yesterday. Let's go to William Bratt now, the former police commissioner, both in New York and a high-ranking police official in Boston. Mr. Bratton, have you had a chance to look? I know that you've seen the television images of the scene downtown.
That's correct.
But there's got to be a dual purpose going on there. They're not only trying to recover bodies and rescue those who are alive, but they're also looking for some evidence, aren't they?
That's correct. There are multiple things happening at this juncture. There is certainly the desire to try and find people who are trapped, but the whole area is, in fact, a declared crime scene. They're, as you know, looking for the 4 so-called black boxes. That's a priority of the search, as well as other evidence that they might be able to gather that helped put together this whole series of events. As we're seeing the film clippings from Boston, the Westin Hotel, as well as the news reports about what's going on down in Florida, that quite clearly the activities of those people in that plane were supported by a very significant external apparatus, and that's some of what the FBI clearly is moving to quickly roll up on.
We've been talking a great deal, Commissioner Bratton, about the changes in airport security that will occur across this country. But what about in cities like Boston and New York, in everyday routine pedestrian traffic going in and out of hotels, corporate buildings, high-rises, that kind of thing? Likely to be a pretty profound change there, too, I would think.
I wonder about that, Tom. Certainly the World Trade Center, which I'm very, very familiar with, in and out of there all the time, had probably the tightest security of any major complex, certainly in this country. And that security was certainly breached yesterday by the crash of 2 planes into it. The security at the airports will certainly change, and that's something I'm also aware of with my international travel. The days of last minute running to catch the plane are over, and it's going to add significantly to the impact on travel plans. And in the short term, I think the fear level that on the way over, I heard a comment about one of the baseball players concerned about traveling in planes to get to their next round of games when the baseball leagues begin playing again.
Commissioner Bratton, but you must be struck, as we all are, the difference between security when you're, say, at the Frankfurt airport and the security in this country, even at our major metropolitan airports. Right.
Well, there's 3 different types that oftentimes in Europe and some of the third world countries, the prevalence of very visible security with the machine guns that you never see in the United States. In the United States, it's very unusual to actually see a uniformed police officer. We rely on the first line of visibility that oftentimes senior citizens who are running the metal detection machines. Most of our airports have police officers assigned, but not in very large numbers and certainly not in a visible capacity. Clearly, having moved up to a level 4, many of those airports for the foreseeable future will have a much heightened actual police presence. And indeed, I would think some of these airports will end up moving toward having police present at all of the checkpoints as part of their increased security. That will certainly be a change for us in what is thought to be a very open society.
Thank you very much, former New York City Police Commissioner William Bratton. Let's go now to New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, who is briefing the press right now.
Described as walking wounded. Many of them ended up in New Jersey hospitals. New Jersey police, state police, some of the local police departments in New Jersey, fire departments are there on the scene helping us and supporting us, and their assistance has been enormously important and very, very valuable. And I thank you very much, Governor. Really terrific. And that's really been true of everyone. They've all come to our assistance and our aid and our help. And New Yorkers who are strong and very resilient and should also know that they have lots of support, lots of people from around the state, from neighboring states like New Jersey, and all over the country that want to help us, want to support us. The President has made certain that the military is deployed in such a way as to keep us as safe as we possibly can be, given the times that we live in. And the New York Police Department and the other agencies are doing everything that they can to assure us as much safety as is possible. And people should know that they're not alone, that there are a lot of people suffering with them, there to help them and support them. I apologize to the families of people that are lost right now. We have lots of families seeking information about who was in the World Trade Center. Did they get out? Didn't they get out? Are we able to recover them? Aren't we able to recover them? And we don't know the answers to all of those questions yet. We so far have a body count of 55 people as of about a half hour ago. We were able to take out another person about 3 hours ago, 3 hours ago, a woman who was found still alive, taken to the hospital. So now there are at least 4 people that we've been able to take out. We're searching for others, and we'll try to get more information, and we'll try to do the best that we can to identify as many people as possible. But I really think this is the situation we're going to be living with for a while, which is we'll only know whether we've saved someone or recovered someone's body when that actually happens. But we'll try to get as much information as possible. We have the airline manifests now. They're being kept by the police department. But if people check with us, the police department and the FBI can check the manifest, and we can get the information for you about whether someone's on the airplane. We would urge people to go back to normal as much as possible, to go to restaurants, go shopping, do things, show that you're not afraid, and show confidence in yourself and in the city. We'd also urge people not to in any way take any action on their own. We've had a few, not many, but we've had a few incidents that appear to have been directed against people because they may be regarded as Arab or Asian or Indian or whatever. The police department has a few reports like that. I emphasize not many, and there was only one situation of anybody trying to steal anything last night. So we haven't had looting, which we're going to certainly do everything we can to stop. But nobody should attack anyone else.
Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who is briefing the press here, and we do expect to hear momentarily from Attorney General John Ashcroft. The mayor is saying that they don't have a lot of information. He is apologizing to the families who had people trapped in the World Trade Center or had conversations with them, and then the second plane hit and did not hear from them again. This has been a nightmare of epic proportions for so many New Yorkers. There are 10 to 20,000 people there altogether working. We don't know for sure how many got out, but wives are looking for husbands, husbands are looking for wives, good friends are trying to figure out what may have happened to their friends, and other workers who were in the building and did get out are trying to find out what happened to their colleagues as well. Some of the companies have set up websites so that people can check in, and they're asking them to call in. But of course, at the back of everyone's mind is that god-awful number of 10 to 20,000 people who were working there when the Twin Trade Towers did come down. So that is the situation in Lower Manhattan as we look now. Let's go back to Rudy Giuliani.
Of the police, fire, and other emergency workers that tragically turn out to have lost their lives in this situation. The Cisco Corporation has also offered a donation of $4 million for similar purposes. And we will organize a charitable organization that can be accountable and can make sure that all of this money gets in the hands that it's intended to get to, meaning to the children and the families that turn out to be the most direct victims of this tragedy. And again, I thank GE and I thank Cisco and all the others who have come forward in their own way and helped us. Governor?
Mayor, thank you. Let me join with you in thanking Governor DeFrancisco for being here and for the extraordinary help we've gotten from New Jersey and the cooperation we've had with the Port Authority. It's been just tremendous, and we appreciate that help. And the mayor referred to us as coming out of a one-hour briefing, but it's really not a briefing. It's a work session. and it's a work session where decisions are made and steps taken to try to alleviate the suffering and do everything we can for those who might still be alive. And I want to commend the mayor for his leadership and for the leadership of his team in these meetings, because it is extraordinary how well everyone works together and how serious everyone is in putting one agenda first and foremost and exclusively, and that is the interest of the people of New York State. So, Mayor, to you and your team, you deserve enormous credit for that leadership. It's not just the leadership, it's also the individual heroes who are out there. And just this afternoon, I was at Bellevue visiting a fallen firefighter who had been hospitalized, and I went up and congratulated him, and he got this smile on his face. And he looked at me, and it was like a line out of a movie. And he said in this thick accent, "What'd you expect? I'm a New Yorker." That's the spirit that is allowing us to get through this tragedy. And it's also the heart, because right after that, he got tears in his eyes and talked about his partner in the fire department who was missing, who had 10 kids. And I told him we would stand with him, we would stand with his partner, the city, the state, the country, to make sure that their heroism was recognized and protected. We have to, in honor of them, get back to business, make sure the states and city and country runs and that people go about their lives. And to that end, tomorrow afternoon, we are going to be holding a special extraordinary joint session of the state legislature in the state capitol, where we'll be having remarks and a memorial for those who, a moment of silence for those who have lost their lives. And the legislature will be passing a bipartisan legislation condemning this terrorist act and commending the tremendous heroism of those who have responded as they have. And I want to thank Senate Majority Leader Joe Bruno and Speaker Shelley Silver for coming together in a bipartisan way to send this strong message to the people of New York and to those terrorists that we're not going to be stopped. Also, to help get back to business as usual, beginning tomorrow, our Empire State Development Corporation will be making available on the 32nd floor of our office at 633 3rd Avenue all state agencies and authorities in one place, where companies, businesses, industries that need emergency economic assistance can come and find out what assistance is available so that we can look to provide, whether it's office space or help with power or lighting, that type of support. This is an incident that was going to remain in our minds throughout our lives, but it's an incident that we can overcome, put behind us, and move forward in protecting our freedom and the future of our city, state, and country. We are going to do that. Mayor, again, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Governor?
If I could, there are a couple reasons why
Thank you very much.
I was able to
That's
well, I
the
wanted to
governor
be
of the
here.
state of New York and the mayor of New York City, George Pataki,
Tell
and
them.
Mayor Giuliani, two Republicans who don't always get along, but they have certainly united for the exceptional effort that is required here. This is the governor of New Jersey, who is also joining them, because New Jersey is cheek by jowl with New York, especially in the lower part of Manhattan, just across the river. Many of the people who worked in the World Trade Center live in New Jersey. At any rate, the governor told a haunting and poignant story about a fireman who said he was down there because he's a New Yorker, and his partner, he said with tears in his eyes, was missing. His partner, the father of 10 children. This city has yet to go through the worst of the emotional trauma when we finally realize just how many citizens, as the president said yesterday, neighbors, friends, husbands, fathers, mothers, girlfriends, sisters, are missing in the rubble of the World Trade Center. The city's going to have to deal with that emotionally and psychologically as well, when the hard, cold reality of it is finally accounted for. In the meantime, the search and rescue effort does continue in lower Manhattan. That's what's left of the World Trade Center, the two 110-story buildings. We continue to say that with a sense of disbelief, because it just is hard to imagine that there could be such a complete destruction of those two buildings. But what happened simply is the structural steel inside probably melted as a result of more than 300,000 pounds of jet aviation fuel exploding like a bomb. The two airliners combined carried about that much fuel when they hit the planes. It made them a guided missile, and they brought down the twin trade towers of the World Trade Center. We have not yet heard from Attorney General Ashcroft. We expect to momentarily. 3:30, Ari Fleischer is scheduled to brief. He has been telling Brian Williams and others in the last hour or so that the White House and Air Force One were both targets of these hijackers yesterday, citing credible evidence, but without going into detail to explain in part why the president yesterday took a diversionary route from Florida to Shreveport, Louisiana, and Barks Hill Air Force Base, eventually to Omaha and the Strategic Air Command headquarters, a bunker that is complete with very sophisticated communication before returning to Washington. Now, in fairness to all concerned here, while the president was in the air, there was a great deal of uncertainty about what other targets might be struck. Some airplanes were still in the air and unaccounted for at that hour. We didn't know what was happening with some of the other airplanes that were on domestic flights going from the West Coast back to the East Coast. There were rumors of car bombs at the State Department and bombings in the Washington Mall as well. So the president's national security advisors and prudence dictated that he take that kind of a route and end up in the hardened bunkers of the Strategic Air Command headquarters. At any rate, we'll hear what Ari Fleischer has to say about all of that. NATO says that the terrorist attacks on the United States can be considered an attack on the whole alliance. They're invoking what is described as, or what is Article 5 of the Articles of the NATO alliance, the strongest military alliance in the history of mankind. That means when the United States does identify the terrorist, and if there is a nation that has been harboring, identifies that nation, that it can count on the military and political support of our NATO partners, which have been expanded now to include members of the Eastern European, what used to be called the Eastern European bloc states as well. Czechoslovakia is now a member of NATO, and so is Hungary. We have some additional information here. William Arkin is a military analyst, and he's joining us now. He's someone who is taking a look at the military considerations that we're going to all have to deal with, and the national security considerations in terms of airport security, what goes on. It is going to be hard to find the line between civilian life and military preparations when you go into an airport in the next coming days, Mr. Arkin.
Well, we've definitely seen a breakdown of airport security in the United States, and I imagine one of the reasons why we haven't seen a resumption of flights today, besides the fact that airplanes are just not in the right places, is that we need to reconsider the entire security structure. I think that a more military presence and a greater connection between the FAA and military authorities to understand when planes go off course, where they might be going. That was something we routinely did during the Cold War, but I think that we don't surveil American airspace in the same way that we used to.
Yeah, we've had so many warnings about the United States as a big, fat, vulnerable target for terrorists. I mean, any number of commissions and other terrorist experts have testified before Congress. They've written opinion pages in the New York Times and other major publications in this country. And yet there was a real apathy at the highest levels in Washington, and certainly among the rank-and-file citizens.
Well, I'm not sure it was apathy, but certainly we have not prepared right for terrorism, and we have sort of a culture of response in the United States. We've spent a lot of time and energy preparing states and localities to respond to terrorist incidents, including incidents involving chemical and biological weapons, but we really don't have much of a culture of going after terrorism, and certainly we don't have a warning structure that would be able to detect this kind of very sophisticated act. So, you know, on the one hand, I hear the news reports today that are saying that we have evidence that Air Force One and the White House was a target. I believe that that probably comes, Tom, as a result of intelligence analysts now focusing their attention on trying to go back through intercepts and data that we might have actually had in our hands yesterday, but yet because we only have a few tens or scores of intelligence analysts among tens of thousands focusing on terrorism at any one time, a lot of information goes through the American system and it doesn't get analyzed in real time, it doesn't get used. And so now, of course, they're going back, looking through, sifting through for forensic evidence. And I think what we're going to find over the next few days, that like Pearl Harbor, there indeed was information, and now we're just going to learn what that information was and why it didn't get to the proper authorities.
All right, Mr. Arkin, thank you very much. Also in Washington is Neil Livingston, who is another authority on terrorism in this country. Mr. Livingston, there's been a continuing debate in America about immigration, undocumented people from other countries coming into America, overstaying their visa, and then disappearing into this country in one form or another. My guess is that there will be a big crackdown at the immigration gates in all the major portals to America.
Well, the borders were closed for a short period of time yesterday, even our borders with Mexico and Canada. And I think you're right. There is going to be a real reassessment of who we give visas to, the fact that we don't follow up on people who come here.
Mr. Livingston, I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment because the Defense Secretary is giving us a briefing now. Donald Rumsfeld.
Which I understand is going to be available shortly. I'm en route over to another meeting in the White House in the next few minutes, so I thought I'd just stop down and make 2 or 3 points. First, we currently believe and are certainly hopeful that the number of casualties being reported in the press is high. As you know from your own observation out there, the work is still going forward, and we won't know for some time precise numbers, but from everything that we currently know, the estimate that's been widely reported is considerably high, and we certainly pray that that's the case. Second, I do want to again express our sympathy to the families and friends and colleagues of all those who have been harmed by this attack on our country. Also, we're, needless to say, deeply grateful to the many units from all over this area that are out there and have been out there for more than 24 hours. Firemen, ambulances, and different teams and squads of individuals who are doing a very professional job for our country. We are, in a sense, seeing the definition of a new battlefield in the world, a 21st century battlefield. And it is a different kind of conflict. It is something that is not unique to this century, to be sure, but it is, given our geography and given our circumstance, it is in a major sense new for this country. Finally, I'd like to say a word or two to the men and women in the defense establishment, most of whom deal with classified information. Since the end of the Cold War, there's been a relaxation of tension, and it's had a lot of effects. It's led to proliferation. It's led to the movement towards asymmetrical threats as opposed to more conventional threats. One of the other effects has been it has had an effect on how people handle classified information. And it seems to me that it's important to underline that when people deal with intelligence information and make it available to people who are not cleared for that classified information, the effect is to reduce the chances that the United States government has to track down and deal with the people who have perpetrated the attacks on the United States and killed so many Americans. Second, when classified information dealing with operations is provided to people who are not cleared for that classified information, the inevitable effect is that the lives of men and women in uniform are put at risk because they are the ones who will be carrying out those prospective operations. And this is a message really for all the men and women in the United States government who have access to classified information. It seems to me that when they see or learn of someone who is handling classified information in a way that is going to put the lives of the men and women in uniform at risk, they ought to register exactly what kind of a person that is. It's a person who's willing to violate federal criminal statutes and willing to frustrate our efforts to track down and deal with terrorists, and willing to reveal information that could cause the lives of men and women in uniform. I think it's time for all who deal with that information to treat it with the care and respect that it merits. I'd be happy to respond to a few questions.
Secretary?
Yes, Bob.
The casualty figure you referred to, I assume, is the 800 number that was provided by the Arlington County Fire Department.
It is.
And you say it's considerably high. We've heard from the military service.
I hope and pray that it is.
The military services, information from the military services indicates that it may be more in the neighborhood of 100 to 150. Is that closer to reality, or can you give us some
We just
better
won't
guidance?
know until we finish the work. The problem with trying to do roster checks with units, it may not include people that were connected with the heliport. It may not include people, contractor people. It may not include watchmen. It may not include work people who were working in the area. So it is folly to try to pretend that there's a number before there's a number. There is not a number, nor have we pinned down precisely how many people were in the aircraft who would also be in that general area.
There are some in the Middle East who are saying that the United States does not have the belly to do the kind of response to this attack on the United States that this administration, previous administration, don't have it to go after them in the kind of way that they have to be gone after, without any specifics whatsoever. Help us with the attitude that you go into this process with.
Well, I guess time will tell. I guess I'm kind of old-fashioned. I'm inclined to think that if you're going to cock it, you throw it, and you don't talk about it a lot. So my instinct is that what you do is you go about your business and do what you think you have to do. I think anyone who thinks it's easy is wrong. I think that it will require a sustained and broadly based effort, and I don't think that people ought to judge outcomes until sufficient time has passed to address what is clearly a very serious problem for the world. And it's not restricted to a single entity, state or non-state entity. It is an attack on a way of life. The purpose of terrorism is to terrorize. It is to alter behavior. It is to force people who believe in freedom to be less free by altering their behavior and redressing a balance between freedom and security. Anyone who's ever been in a war zone, as I know most of you have, you know that when you walk out of a building, you don't walk out with your head high whistling. You look around the corner and see what's out there. And that's not the way Americans live, and that's not the way we want to live.
Mr. Secretary, let me ask one. I was just cut off for a second, which I kindly left to my colleagues. So we're getting word from reporters at the White House, quoting Ari Fleischer, that the target of the 757 was actually the White House, and also Air Force One was targeted. Can you shed any
I'll leave that to the
clarification on
White
that?
House. I'll leave that to the White House.
Mr. Secretary, your comments on the handling of classified information, are you suggesting that it's time to move to a more secretive government in which there's less transparency about what it is you're doing? And how does that square with the goal of openness that reassures both friends and foes around the world that the United States intentions are good? We all know that there's a wealth of material that's classified unnecessarily and doesn't necessarily need to be.
Well, As I'm sure you've discovered, I do believe in openness, and I think it's enormously important in a free system with a free press and a democratic underpinning to our wonderful success as a country that we recognize that and respect it. I also know that you're quite right. There are things that get classified that ought not to be classified. But what I said is enormously important, and that is that when classified information is compromised by people who ought to know better because they're unprofessional or uncaring and perfectly willing to violate federal criminal law and seemingly willing to put people's lives at risk, their colleagues and their neighbors and their friends, I think it's something that should stop. Yes.
Secretary, Jim's question, folks, he needs to leave. We need to get you across the river. Last question.
Was sloppy handling of classified information, did that play some role in the attacks?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, sir.
It is an issue that I think, however, needs to be elevated and looked at, and that people in all aspects of government.
What's the catalyst? Why are you raising that today?
Yeah, has it happened in the aftermath?
It has been happening daily.
Sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Secretary of Defense Don Rumsfeld, one of the true veterans of this administration, former Illinois congressman, former director of the OMB, former Secretary of Defense, former White House Chief of Staff, widely considered to be one of the most skilled political operators in Washington with a wide-ranging portfolio and a conservative warrior who is determined to bring a new kind of discipline and realignment to United States military forces, sending a very strong message to the U.S. military services today that he will not tolerate any sloppy handling of classified material. It seems to me that he was sending a very strong warning in advance of what will be at some point a military operation against the people who were responsible for this terrorist war that was declared on America yesterday and carried out in New York and in Washington, D.C. And there are criminal penalties for mishandling classified information. They're not always invoked, obviously, but the Secretary was saying to military personnel, do not in any fashion jeopardize the lives of people who may be involved in these operations by carelessly handling classified information or trying to make yourself out to be a big deal by sharing it with other people, including, by the way, the press. So that is Don Rumsfeld, who gave us an update from the Pentagon now. He goes off to the White House for a meeting. He would not comment on reports from the White House that, in fact, the White House itself and Air Force One were targets of the hijackers based on what Ari Fleischer is describing as credible evidence. He also said that the estimate of the death toll at the Pentagon given to us by the Arlington County Fire Department of 800 was far too high. We had been reporting earlier today that they have revised that estimate down to just over 100, but he wouldn't get into a number because he said we won't know until we're able to go in there and get a complete accounting of the roster of the people who were there and the people who were supposed to be there. Don Rumsfeld is one of the principal patrons of the President's Missile Defense Shield. That will go forward as a critical part of the national security agenda of this administration. And the people who are supporting it and promoting it were quick to say yesterday, of course it would not have had an effect on this kind of a terrorist war. It was not designed to do that. We were talking about other uses for the Missile Defense Shield, which is to intercept incoming missiles, especially those that may be launched from so-called rogue nations. Dan Abrams, you're in Lower Manhattan. Can you tell us if there's anything new? Certainly, is there any encouraging news to come out of the search and rescue operations?
Well, Tom, the rescue effort continues, and every once in a while there's a good piece of news, and that is either that they have found an additional person, they have found an additional firefighter, but it has been few and far between. I think a lot of the triage units here a little disappointed. Only disappointed that there are not more people that they can help. There aren't more survivors there. They are set up there. The hospitals here are prepared. And I think one of the most disappointing aspects of this for the hospitals is that there aren't more survivors. With that said, they are still working furiously behind me. I can tell you that I've been talking to firefighters, I've been talking to EMTs, I've been talking to doctors who've been emerging from that scene, who have just been talking about the heroic efforts, in particular by the fire department there, to literally dig through feet and feet of rubble. And that is exactly what they're doing. And Tom, I can also tell you from walking the streets here, remember, all of Manhattan is closed below 14th Street. And from those who are not from Manhattan, that is an enormous portion of Manhattan Island. And from walking around what are fairly empty streets, as a lifelong New Yorker, I can tell you I've never seen anything like this. People who don't know one another saying hello to one another. People who don't know one another sitting down at cafes with one another talking about what has happened. There's this image of New Yorkers as this sort of jaded group. This, I think, has changed everything. Tom?
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Dan Abrams. Within 30 seconds or so, the Attorney General of the United States will be briefing. We've heard from Secretary of State Colin Powell talking about an alliance of nations. Here is now the Attorney General, also Defense Secretary Don Rumsfeld, talking to reporters today.
Highly coordinated effort. I want to thank all of the federal, state, the local agencies that have worked tirelessly yesterday and today to help the victims of this act of war find relief and to help the United States of America locate the people who are responsible for these terrible acts of war. Immediately after the first report of a plane crashing into the World Trade Towers, numerous federal agencies coordinating with the White House mobilized their resources. Throughout the day, secure video conferences took place among the National Security Council, the Department of Justice, the Department of State, the Department of Defense, the Department of Treasury, FEMA, CIA, the FAA, and other federal agencies. Both the President and the Vice President presided over a number of cabinet and sub-cabinet meetings and video conferences. Continuity of government plans were put into effect. Within the Department of Justice, our full resources were put into operation immediately. As I will explain in greater detail in a few moments, these resources have been deployed both to investigate this act of war and to assist victim survivors and victim families. But let me stress that this is not simply a Department of Justice effort. The response of the federal government across the board has been, I believe, from the President of the United States to the rescue workers, magnificent. I'll now turn to the information that the response we have been making has developed. I'll give you the information that we can give you. However, we will give you only facts that we can confirm. You may be hearing things that we have not told you, but some people have the luxury of speculating. We won't speculate, but we'll only give you confirmed facts. And also, we must be careful to protect confidential intelligence sources and the methods of our intelligence so we do not compromise this ongoing investigation or the capacity of this nation to undertake such investigations as this. The 4 planes were hijacked by between 3 and 6 individuals per plane, using knives and box cutters, and in some cases making bomb threats. Our government has credible evidence that the White House and Air Force One were targets. A number of the suspected hijackers were trained as pilots in the United States. The Department of Justice has undertaken perhaps the most massive and intensive investigation ever conducted in America. The full resources of the FBI, the Justice Department's Criminal Division, the U.S. Attorney's offices, the INS, and other components have been brought to bear and will be focused in this endeavor. Throughout the day and into the night last night, Deputy Attorney General Larry Thompson and Assistant Attorney General Michael Chertoff, who is not with us at this moment, and I were present at the FBI's Strategic Information and Operations Center, together, of course, with the director and a number of other individuals. The Justice Department is working closely with investigators, the FAA, and the intelligence community, including the CIA, the NSA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the Defense Department. Numerous agencies have assigned personnel to the SIOC at the FBI to coordinate investigative efforts so that information which is received on these premises becomes immediately available to the cooperating agencies. And I might add that we reciprocate with similar deployments in a variety of other settings. The Justice Department's Terrorism and Violent Crime Section is coordinating the response of the U.S. Attorney's offices nationwide. These agencies have a presence at the SIOC here in the FBI 24 hours a day and are coordinating efforts both in the United States and worldwide around the clock. Investigators are reviewing intelligence and have received numerous credible leads. Command posts have been established at all crime scenes. Evidence response teams and the FBI's disaster squad have been deployed to the crash sites. The recovery of bodies and the collection of evidence is ongoing at the Pentagon and at the crash site in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. Investigators are working with the National Transportation Safety Board to recover the black boxes from the crash sites. The crime scene at the WTC has been secured, but is not yet a crime scene accessible to investigators. The United States Attorney's Office's terrorism units and the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Forces are obtaining the passenger manifests, rental car receipts, telephone logs, videotape from parking garages, and pay telephone videotape records at all scenes for review and appropriate follow-up interviews. All investigative resources of the FBI's laboratory and crisis response capabilities have been mobilized. Now let me turn this podium over to FBI Director Bob Mueller to talk more about the investigation itself.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. I want to start by saying that the men and women of the FBI join the nation in expressing our deep sympathies for the victims of these horrific tragedies and their families. And we, all of us in the FBI, pledge to those directly affected by these attacks that we will leave no stone unturned in our quest to help find those responsible and to bring those individuals to justice. Let me turn, if I could, for a moment to the effort that we have undertaken at the FBI to investigate these tragedies. Early after the planes started to fall yesterday, as soon as we heard that there was a particular city that was either a city of origin for a flight or a city such as New York where a flight went in, we established command posts. We have at those command posts and at a number of offices around the country where there are leads, more than 4,000 special agents who are assigned to assist this investigation. 4,000 special agents and 3,000 support personnel. We have over 400 of our laboratory personnel deployed at the crime scenes in New York City, south of Johnstown in Pennsylvania, and at the Pentagon. And we anticipate this level of resource commitment will continue for the immediate future. In the last 24 hours, we have been addressing two objectives. The first objective is to determine, identify the hijackers on each of the planes. Having identified the hijackers on each of the planes, we then have sought to identify any of their associates remaining in the United States. Our first effort is to identify any associates in the United States who might be related to the hijackers and to remove those associates, investigate, and arrest, given the evidence, those individuals, and to remove any threat to the air system in the future. That is our first objective. The second objective is to gather any and all evidence we have as to whom assisted the hijackers, and not only in this country, but also overseas. We have, in the last 24 hours, taken the manifests and used those as an evidentiary base, and have talked to many of the families of the victims, and have successfully, I believe, identified many of the hijackers on each of the 4 flights that went down. We also have identified, through a number of leads, principally at the cities of origin, a number of individuals whom we believe may have had something to do with the hijackings, and we are pursuing those leads aggressively. Let me conclude at this juncture by emphasizing again the FBI's total and unwavering commitment to this investigation. We will not stop, and as I said before, we will leave no stone unturned until we have determined who was responsible for these attacks on our freedom. Now, I would be happy to entertain questions, as I'm sure the Attorney General would.
Director, have there been any arrests of any of these associates that you've identified?
Now, I understand that there is reporting out there that the FBI has made arrests with regard to the hijacking. That is not accurate. There have been occasions where we have interviewed individuals and come to find that the individual is out of status, and that individual has been detained on an immigration hold. But there have been no arrests relating to these hijackings at this point.
Talk to and the people that you've identified, are these people that have been under FBI's watch in the past relating to other kinds of terrorism activities? Are they people who you're familiar with?
As we identify names, there may be one or more individuals with whom we have information as to involvement with individual terrorist groups.
We've seen activity today in Boston, Rhode Island, and in southern Florida. Can you walk us through, in any of these cases, and give us any guidance on why these particular individuals have been stopped and what the FBI is doing?
We have in Boston, my understanding also in Providence, and also in Miami, we have leads indicating the presence at some point in time of either the hijackers themselves, and we are attempting to recreate the travels of each of the hijackers on the planes, either the hijackers themselves or their associates. And consequently, we are following all leads with interviews, with search warrants, and whatever investigative techniques are necessary to obtain the evidence.
They've got to get to the White House for a meeting.
How many?
How many associates, Mr. Mueller, do you think? And how many were workers at the airport?
I can't give you a definitive number on the associates. Thank you very much.
Well, there's an important piece of news in that briefing from Robert Mueller, who is the new director of the FBI. The FBI has made no arrests in this case so far. There have been any number of reports today of 3 being arrested in the Boston area. NBC's Pete Williams was telling us earlier that it was his understanding that they'd asked for warrants for the arrest of material witnesses in the case. That is, that they want to question some people in that. But Robert Mueller saying that there had been no arrests thus far. 3 to 6 hijackers on each plane, armed with knives and box cutters, but also using the threat of bombs on board. Obviously, several of them had been trained as pilots in the United States, that according to Attorney General John Ashcroft. They also repeated what we've been hearing from the White House saying that both the White House and Air Force One were targets of these hijackers. They had credible evidence to that effect. R.A. Fleischer was the source of that. He is the White House press secretary, and he's scheduled to give a briefing before too long. There will be a meeting going on at the White House that Secretary Rumsfeld and others will be attending before too long. I have on the telephone now from Kansas City a man who was on one of those diverted flights, the former director of the CIA, Robert Gates. Mr. Gates, let's just catch up, first of all, with your personal travel. Where were you headed when all of this happened?
I was on my way to Cleveland.
From where?
From Seattle.
And where did they divert you to?
To Kansas City here.
You had to stay overnight?
At least one.
And are they going to let you go on to Cleveland now?
I think I'll try and head back home.
Back to Seattle?
Yeah.
Mr. Gates, you ran the CIA during a difficult time in America. What would be your recommendation to the president in terms of what he must do, first of all, as he sets out diplomatically and militarily to carry on his end of what he has now called a terrorist war in the world?
Seems to me that the actions that the government has underway are in fact the exact way to go. Finding out what the facts are, pursuing the evidence, assembling the evidence in terms of who is responsible, at the same time as taking action to deal with the aftermath of the tragedies here at home. Dealing with foreign leaders, making clear that that this is the time for, in essence, the rest of the world to fish or cut bait in terms of their relationship with the United States. There are those who support and sympathize with the terrorists, and there's everybody else. And there's not any room left for nations or groups operating in gray areas.
William Arkin, who is as you know, probably a national security affairs and terrorism expert, was saying earlier, we probably did get some intercepts. We just couldn't sift through them in time to head it off. Is that a problem in our intelligence community these days?
Well, I don't know what the what information might have been available. I've heard on the various television programs people talking about the emphasis on in recent years on electronic intelligence as opposed to human intelligence. But the truth is that that both have been fairly starved for resources for quite some time. And if you talk to knowledgeable people, they will tell you that the electronic side faces as many challenges and the need for resources as human intelligence. There have been efforts during the 90s to improve human intelligence, but these are incredibly difficult targets to penetrate. They're family and clan-based. Most of them are related. They almost all have bloody hands already. And as you're aware, in recent years, there's been a lot of controversy over the kind of people the CIA might use as sources, and I think that has imposed perhaps some obstacles to getting as many sources as we could. But I think that the problem is that all of these resources need to be increased, not just one or another kind of collection discipline.
What you're saying is that if we're going to be dealing with people who have bloody hands, we may have to enlist our own people who have bloody hands.
Well, what I'm saying is that if you're going to recruit an agent who can tell you what a terrorist group is planning, chances are that person is going to be a member of that terrorist group and not have clean hands. And the question is whether you're prepared to make the trade-off of dealing with people like that in exchange for information that might prevent catastrophes like this.
That's just one of the many difficult decisions that this country is going to have to make, Mr. Gates. We hope that you do get either back home to Seattle or your destination, because we want to go to Pakistan now, where we have a correspondent, Ron Allen, in place. Pakistan is turning out to be a key player. We're going to go, R.A. Fleischer is coming up in the White House in the press briefing room. R.A. Fleischer is the source of those reports that the White House itself and Air Force One were targets of these hijackers. If they have credible evidence to that effect, we'll be eager to hear his answer to the many questions that he'll have when he goes into the White House press briefing room, although he is likely to say that for reasons of security, we can't share with you all of our intelligence information that we have, and that very often is the case. We heard earlier from Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld a very sharp warning to military personnel that they ought not to be careless in their handling of classified material and sharing it with other people, because they put their colleagues, the men and women who are in uniform, at risk. And it seemed to me that he was sending that as a preemptive strike as they prepare some kind of a military operation against these terrorists. He does not want to be reading about it first or hearing it on television or radio while the operation is underway. That is always a dilemma, because very often the Pentagon and other national security agencies are leaky during these times of military operations, and we do hear about it. But our standing procedure here at NBC is that if there are troops at risk, we do not go on the air with that material. We knew, for example, during the bombing run against Libya, when the planes lifted off in England, and where they were and where they were headed, and did not say anything until they began to drop their bombs. I remember being in Haiti when units of the 82nd Airborne lifted off from Fort Bragg. In fact, we think that the Haitian government probably got a tip from a pay telephone just outside of Fort Bragg, because those big cargo planes were lifting off into the nighttime skies. Everybody was aware of it. And of course, the negotiations were underway between Jimmy Carter and the Haitian government.